And we are live. Welcome, everybody. This is Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres in Marion, Michigan. And welcome to the Anyone Can Farm Experience live chat. Tonight is our interview night. Today is, let's see, Jordy, is it like the 18th or the 16th?
17th.
17th? 17th day of November 2022. I should know that hunting season starts here on the 15th, and that everybody goes crazy for that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's see. We started this interview last week, but the internet didn't cooperate with us, so we had to break off. We're interviewing Jordan Buck tonight, but he goes by Jordy, right?
Mhm.
And let's see. The topic for tonight is homesteading, small scale farming, and self sustainability. Right. And Jordy's, oh, I don't have my glasses. I don't have my glasses. This is not good. Okay. Jordy is a full time construction worker and part time farmer, husband and father of four. Jordy manages a 1 acre homestead to grow produce for the farmers market, raise livestock, grow livestock feed, and produce half of the food for his family. His goal is to help others on the homesteading path. So, me and you have a common goal.
So
Yeah,
it seems.
yeah. I think that's a good thing to do. I could share that in a minute. But, in industrial ag around here, everybody's very secretive about what they're doing. And they seem like they're all competing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they're really not because it's such a big market out there in the food world.
Everybody's got to eat.
Yeah, yeah. But I started early on sharing what I did with other people. I mean, I didn't hold anything back. I'd tell them whatever they needed to know.
Hmm.
And what it does is just brings more people in.
It
And
does. You bring trust, clarity. People start seeing more kind of what farmers are, what they're about, and how they work, and it opens up doors for people. It
okay,
brings
yeah.
people in.
It, I this weekend we did a class, and I came away from it thinking I've been way too focused on passing information and and getting myself home and making sure nobody got hurt, making sure the operation went off without a hitch. Right. I've been really concerned with that. And then this weekend, I guess we're getting good at it because I backed away from it and I just focused more on the people. And I'm looking at these people saying, well, you want to do what I'm doing. You want to get into homesteading, but these were people that knew tons of stuff that I didn't know, and so it was a benefit to me to conduct the class. But can you tell us about yourself? Why you're doing this? How you got started?
Yeah, sure,
Things like
sure.
that. Just go on a
So
rant.
I got started more or less about 10, 11 years ago. Shortly after I went out on my own, left my parents' home, and I moved up to Ensley Center, Michigan.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I'd always kind of had this yearning and dream to be a farmer of some sort. Work the soil, walk the land. That kind of lifestyle's always been in my heart, but I didn't really get into it for the longest time because everybody around me always just talked about how farming is a dead end lifestyle. It's where people go broke and where nothing works out.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting into it a bit more out of desperation because I was having a hard time getting by. I was making 13 bucks an hour and paying bills on that. So I did my best to learn how to start growing some produce, which didn't work for about the first 2 years. It took 3 years before I learned how to actually grow a functional small vegetable garden. And a friend of mine stopped by and dropped off 24 old laying hens that he had. They were a little older, so they were slowing down on laying. And I just let them free range. And they got healthier, lost some weight, and started laying better. And So that's how I started with chickens. I had 24 totally free range chickens, and that worked great until the raccoons found them about 2 years later. But so I started out, I mean, very, very frugal, very low budget, didn't have much to work with, and I still keep a lot of that frugality in mind with everything that I do. I think that's very important. I think a lot of the homesteading crowd today misses the point of functionality, frugality to a point, and keeping things, in a good perspective. I mean, it's great fun to get into this stuff, but a lot of the glamorous side of it all is really unattainable for a lot of folks just due to, I mean, how much money you put into things, how quickly that can draw all your money down if you're not
Yeah.
watching it, you know. So, I mean, I just kept very frugal basically because I had to for the longest time. Um, I had to really learn how to build up the soil. That was the most important part of all of our operations together, was learning how to manage and build up the soil. My soil was about as bad as it could be. I had a hard time growing weeds. It was pretty bad. So learning how to naturally build up the soil, learning that throwing fertilizer down does not fix problems. And it took about 6 years to really start getting fairly fertile soil. Now my garden has grown every year. I keep increasing it in size. It's now, I have a quarter acre of nice rows, marked out, kind of flat beds, not raised beds, but nice marked out, very well worked garden area. And it's some of the most productive soil I've ever seen. It works great. This past year, we finally got into the farmers market for the first time, and I ended up running the market.
Uh-huh.
So interesting how that worked out.
Huh.
Um, let's see here. We we didn't sell nearly as much as we grew. I have to work on that at the market yet. But I mean, just for a few basics, we did about 600 head of lettuce. And I mean, I'm
Oh,
talking 2 and 3 pound heads, massive heads of lettuce in this nice, cool spring weather we get. We did about 50 bushels of tomatoes. I got 9 bushels of potatoes, and most of those are still in the shed. We did 25 bushels of sunchokes, those Jerusalem artichoke tubers,
oh yeah,
as
I like
well
them.
as 7 pigs. We did just under 100 rabbits this past year that we raised up on
Wow.
mostly wild fodder and fodder crops that we planted for them. So we
Uh-huh.
grew some corn. I feed the rabbits corn. I know a lot of folks don't like that because of potential digestive issues. I've experimented with that for a long time and haven't seen any issues with it,
Hmm.
with the large breed rabbits that I raise. So we do grow some corn for the rabbits, as well as they eat the corn leaves, which are good high protein fodder for them.
Yeah.
Sunflowers. I grow sunflowers for our pigs and rabbits. For the seeds, they're very high protein, about equal to soybean, and easier to grow than soybeans. So we grow sunflowers, but also the sunflower leaves. And on the sunchokes, they're a sunflower. So the leaves on the sunflowers, those are a very high quality rabbit feed. So all summer long, spring, summer, and mostly fall, we pretty much fed our rabbits exclusively cultivated and wild fodder crops. So
Wow.
that was, they come out a little bit smaller generally when you do that because it's hard to give them just the right balance to grow perfectly. But about 100 rabbits, so that would have been something like 200 pounds of meat just from that, from the green fodder crops that we grew. So, and I mean, I'm working a small piece of land, and there's only so much I can do, but I still have room to increase the production that we're doing.
Okay. How much land are you on? Just so
I
for
have
our
1 acre total. Half of it is, well, almost half of it now is cleared land. I have 1 acre that's fully functional, or 1/4 acre, fully functional, beautiful cleared land. And then I have another quarter acre that is full of stumps and some brush yet. We've been clearing out more. I've got another 20 big stumps to pull out and a lot of roots to clear out and then smoothing it out.
okay.
And I got to get that done by springtime because that's going to be my pasture over there to grow more rabbit feed. We're increasing our rabbit production over the
Okay.
winter here and into the spring.
Okay. Yeah, you go to the Hastings market. Did I hear you say that before?
Howard City,
Howard City. Okay.
and I might be doing some with some of the other local markets. It depends really on what's feasible and how much I can step back from my day job.
Okay. What kind of hours are you working your day job?
I try to keep it no more than 50 hours a week. It's usually closer to 50 hours on the job and 2 hours driving a day.
Ooh.
A lot of driving.
Yeah. What kind of construction?
It's a carpet installation. I work in the new construction side of carpet installation.
Okay. Yeah. So you're going
And
all over the
aside
place.
from, hmm?
You're going all over the place
Oh
then.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then aside from that, I have a side job where I do writing informative articles on homesteading topics on my website.
Really?
Yes, I spend about an hour or two every morning writing articles and researching and putting things together for that.
Oh, that's great. That's a
So,
new twist.
yeah, I enjoy
I'm writing
writing.
the stuff down here
Yeah,
so it stays with your bio. So, when we finally meet someday, I was actually just down there this last weekend. I was in Trufant.
was that the course you were teaching?
Yeah, yeah. And I actually went past the Hastings Market.
Nice. Yeah, I don't
Going
get to
down there.
Trufant too often, but it's only about a 25, 30-minute drive from my house.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 35 minutes, I guess, from my house.
So, okay, you said something that I thought was kind of interesting that I'm going to ask you if you could expound on it. You said that in the early days, I can relate to this, but this is for the viewing audience. You had to be really frugal. Can you explain your definition of frugality and give
Okay,
us a couple of examples
sure.
of
Yeah, so an example of very frugal. I wanted to grow some crops, so all I bought were a pack of seeds. And I got a small little container of a very cheap fertilizer I found on clearance in January.
okay.
That's all I paid for. I mean, no edging, no. I had a shovel, half of a shovel, because half of the handle broke off. But that's all I started with. I couldn't afford even a hoe at the time. So not
Hmm,
until my second year did I put money into a new set of tools, a hoe, a shovel, and a rake. And I still
yeah,
have those.
yeah. That's important for people to hear.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when new people come onto a homestead that's pretty well established and they think, wow, I can never do all of this. But
It takes time and slowly working on it to build things
yeah,
up. Very seldom does somebody just open up shop, and put in irrigation, maybe some drip lines, some outdoor hydrants, get the water lines piped in, get all the ground nice and flat, maybe bring in truckloads of compost and manure and put out some nice beds and mark your rows. That's something that usually takes years of work. Either
yeah,
years of work or you're going to spend 20 grand your first year doing it.
yeah. And from my experience, when people have a lot of cash to throw at something like that, you make mistakes because there's so much haste.
When you're early on, 90% of everything is a mistake at first.
Yeah,
So if
I
you're
would
just
agree.
doing a lot of money at first, then that's going to be some costly mistakes because especially if you don't have someone coming alongside of you, really just pointing things out and teaching you a lot, then yeah, if you're throwing a lot of money in at the beginning, you're going to end up changing everything, or
Yeah.
you're going to end up hating everything that you spent money on.
Oh, that'd be fun. It'd be a fun article if you got homesteaders to tell you some of the biggest mistakes that they've made. I've made some beauties, absolute
Yeah.
beauty.
I mean, I not until this past year when we were really planning on going full out in the farmers markets did I actually put much money into things. I've been holding out for 5 years on getting an outdoor hydrant, just a frost-free water hydrant, so I could have better water pressure using the hose I have on. up at the mobile home, I didn't have enough water pressure to run a single sprinkler. So I
Huh.
had just this wimpy little hose that I had to carry around with me or use buckets to water my whole garden. And I did that for quite a few years. So, I mean, so I spent $300 on my hydrant. Um, I spent about $200 on sprinklers. I got a bunch of sprinklers that mount up on T-posts so that I can get them
Okay.
high above the crops. They're only like 20 or 30 bucks each. So I
Yeah.
got a number of those. They're durable. They last a while. They work great. I can move them anywhere. And I have about 300 or 400 feet of regular garden hose, but I got all of those for free that people were throwing out because they didn't want them anymore. Some of them needed some patching, but I mean that saved me probably 600-700 bucks right there for all those
Yeah.
hose even.
Yeah. I
So
always see when I do something like that, I always look at the dollars that I save, and then I'm
mhm,
able to put it into other like quality tools and
yep,
things like that. I feel good
yeah.
about buying
You got
quality
to
hand
watch where you're putting your money and make sure it's where it matters. You know, keep a budget, keep a practical budget, and then make sure that you're putting your money first on what's most important.
Okay. So, what did you do to build your soil? You know, if you're a frugal guy, how did you do
Yeah.
that?
So I've really gotten a lot into soil building. I've been talking about that a lot more in my YouTube videos lately too. It's something I'm so fascinated with, and it's such an important deal. The absolute first thing I did was learning the importance of just a basic mulch on especially a poor soil. If you have a very sandy soil, especially, they don't hold water. They dry out so fast. So any type of any organic material to be a basic mulch, even if it's just an inch deep, just for starters, to hold moisture in the soil, so you can start bringing in some more of the organisms into the soil to start building it up. The second
Okay.
point was bringing in leaves. I have the back half acre of my yard is all trees. I'm not planning on clearing that out soon. There's way too many trees to go, and they're big ones. So I've got a half acre that drops very heavy leaves every year, and I'll take a portion of those and I'll put them throughout the garden. And just right before it snows, I'll go out and pile them deep and just mulch them with a lawnmower and leave them. And by
Yeah.
springtime, they're basically turned into topsoil,
Yeah.
and just that alone made a very noticeable difference. My soil went from like a brick hard orange kind of sandy clay to starting to take a lot more of a dark color just in 1 year from that.
Yeah.
And once you get that more organic in the soil, I mean, my dirt was like a brick. I went out there to start my first garden in July because I didn't know any better. And I was chipping the soil away, trying to dig a little spot and loosen it up.
Yeah.
So once you get that organic matter around, the earthworms, the insects, the beneficial microbes start loosening up the rest of the soil around it too.
Yeah.
So we did the tree leaves. That was huge. The next thing I did was I put together a chicken tractor, which at the time was a fairly new idea. It wasn't quite so common. Well, I put that together with scraps. It's still somehow holding together. 2x4s and deck boards and the plastic part of an IBC tote with a hole cut in it. That's the coop section.
Yeah.
So I've got this 3 foot wide, 12 foot long chicken tractor that I had about 10 chickens in. And I just moved that down the garden area before and after the garden season, constantly, all spring, winter long, fall after the growing season. And they're depositing, manure, a mix of whatever feathers and whatnot they drop. I love to take that chicken tractor and pile up a bunch of leaves or straw down in the run and just let them walk on that, scratch it up, and nitrogenate it up with their manure. It's an amazing um, bioreactor of sorts for the soil.
Yeah.
And the
Bioreactor. I
animals,
like
they add so much of a natural and really good beneficial microbial life to the soil. It's like putting in an inoculate of good soil biology.
Uh, can you expound a little bit on soil biology?
Yes,
People
yes.
people may have been
So
hearing that for the first time.
So when we're talking soil biology, we're talking about this entire, not even just an ecosystem, more like a universe within the soil. It's crazy. Um, they're constantly discovering new forms of life in soil biology, different types of bacteria, amoebas. Your soil biology is made up mainly of the things you don't see, which are bacteria and amoeba.
Yeah.
And then you have your larger parts of the biology, which is your earthworms, your beetles, your bugs, your ants, that kind of thing. And they all play a role. So when I'm putting down this organic matter, that fuels and feeds the soil biology. So starting first is usually some of the larger insects, the earthworms, that kind of thing. They come in and they start chewing on the organic matter and breaking it up smaller. The next level is your microbes. Basically, it's a massive mix of bacteria and amoebas, and it's pretty cool because once you look down on this microscopic level, it's kind of a massive war against each other, where everything is eating everything constantly. And what that does is it takes all of this organic material that you're putting down and it breaks it down into its base element forms and creates these long chains of these elements in something that we just call humus or humic acid as the main component of humus in the soil.
Okay.
And it holds on to, it's like a sponge is the way I'll describe it. It's like a sponge that holds on to all of these elements that are plant nutrients in the soil, and they will release them slowly over time. So when we're building up the soil biology, that shows us that we are increasing the buildup of this soil humus, this good beneficial organic matter that's long lasting. And really probably the single best and absolute simplest way of monitoring your overall soil health and fertility is by doing a look at your biology, do a worm count. I do these now and then.
Hmm.
It can be quite humbling sometimes because it's, I mean, there has been decades of study into this simple principle of doing a worm count, and it works. And all you do is you take a nice shovel of dirt, a nice deep shovel, and you set it on a table or a flat surface, break it up, and count how many worms are in it.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times you will only see one or even none. In most farm fields, you won't see one worm per shovel, and
Yeah.
that's very bad. In good soil, you want to see at least about 6 or so worms per good shovel of dirt, and anywhere between like 5 and 20 is considered a fine acceptable range. So basically, the higher your worm count, which is number of worms of any type of worms, number of worms per good shovel of dirt, that's the higher your worm count, the better your function of soil biology is, which is building up all the natural nutrients in your soil. And the two biggest things that you do, which destroy all of the soil biology, which is your natural, long lasting soil fertility, the two biggest things that destroy that are tillage and fertilizing. So, and I use both of those tools on my soil, but we have to be careful with those. Tillage, um, it does two main things. One is it breaks up the soil levels or layers. You'll find layers that naturally develop in the soil where different microbes kind of find their range and they work well to create different nutrient types at different levels in the soil. When
Hmm.
you destroy all that, you're changing the function of the soil so much that now these different microbes, instead of kind of at their own level, they're all competing against each other, and you start getting lower variety of microbes, which is a bad thing. That's when things start to go bad, like salmonella or E. coli or other problem bacteria that sometimes become overly present in your soil. That's basically when you don't have enough overall soil biology. So basically,
Okay.
how it works is as you just increase the sheer number of the bacteria in general, the good bacteria rise to the top every time. And when you decrease that number significantly, you have more instances where, because there's less competition, because they're constantly competing against each other, literally eating each other and absorbing each other. You have more instances of bacterial illnesses in crops. You have more instances of soil-borne illness bacteria like your E. coli and salmonella, that kind of thing. So it gets deep fast.
Do you rototill?
I do. I do what I call a minimal tilling. So
Yeah.
I don't till deep. I try to till basically only in the spring, but I do rototill quite heavily down the sides of my mint beds. Otherwise, that stuff will spread like a foot every month.
Okay.
So that I will rototill, but for the most part, I try not to. Just and it's okay if you have to rototill or till sometimes. Just realize that when you do, it does significantly reduce the soil health. It also, one of the other functions is it aerates the soil a lot. When you aerate the soil, you have a very big boom of all the soil bacteria eating through the carbon matter in your soil very, very quickly. And
Okay.
that, I have seen studies showing that just a basic field tillage, one pass through of basic fall tillage in a field, this was a study out in Oregon, it actually caused more carbon to be depleted than they were able to put into the soil from all their crop residues of an oat crop.
Well.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. I've heard a lot of that, and I got a really nice rototiller though.
I have a really cheap one that I beat the tar out of and then rebuilt and repaired a couple times. So I have a little section of my yard that's solid gravel because it used to be my neighbor's driveway. They moved their driveway off after we reestablished the property lines. We had to reconfigure all those when I bought my place. And so now I've got this gravel area. They scooped about a foot of gravel off, but it's still a foot or two of gravel down there. So I rototilled that because I needed to mix in a lot of organic matter into the gravel and clay just to loosen it. So I went through with my little cheap, I bought it for $75 used, rototiller, through solid gravel driveway material, and I tilled in a large truckload of manure that I got from a neighboring dairy farm. That was hard on the tiller.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I use mine. I make a lot of compost, and so I'll spread my compost, and I'll use the tiller to work it in, and it looks so nice. It really looks good.
I'll often rototill through things in the spring if I'm adding a lot of material down, but then after that, I try not to rototill again because I want a natural kind of topsoil layer to start developing, because that
Okay.
is huge for gardening and field crop as well. It conserves a lot of moisture when you get that. I like to spread out a little extra manure or compost or something on top to help just establish a bit of a topsoil layer during the growing season.
Okay.
Saves a lot of soil moisture, and it's when I do that, I see a lot more good soil biology, a lot more earthworm activity, a lot of good things from that. So as much as you can, just as much as you can, develop a good topsoil and leave it alone as much as you can.
Okay. So if you rototilled early and then left it alone,
It helps. The
it
longer
would
that
help.
you leave it sit, especially while plants are growing, the longer you leave it sit, the better. Even, I mean, like some people will rototill down in between their garden rows during the growing season, but
Yeah.
that ends up really tearing up a lot of the capillary roots coming out of the sides
Yeah.
of the plants too. And
Yeah.
you want all of that to remain intact and growing in the soil. One of the biggest things that really boosts the soil biology is what I call the capillary roots, these tiny, fine hair roots, sometimes so small you can barely see them, that all plants have. Those are the roots. They're constantly growing and dying off on plants because they're constantly searching out more water in the soil. So as one little spot of soil dries, the capillary roots die off and they grow more over here. These roots that are growing and dying off, these very fine roots, that's the main source of food for most of the beneficial bacteria in your soil. Those are what really you often get more benefit from the bottom of your growing area just from the root system than you can from applying stuff to the top that way.
Okay.
So as much as you can, um, during the growing season, leave it alone near your plants as much as you can. And I try really hard not to walk down too close down through the plants. Don't crush down the soil by your roots. You want it loose, you want it soft so that the microbes can work, so that the plants don't have to work hard to grow out their roots, and so the water can infiltrate down in there. The soil holds better water when it's loose
Yeah.
than when it's all compacted.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. Well, that's the flora part of things. Tell us a little bit about your animal operation there and
Oh yeah,
how
I like
like
my
how it
animals.
fits in to
Sure.
is it okay.
So I started with the chickens, and I learned fairly early on that I could incorporate chickens into my garden. I learned I had to kind of enclose my chickens more, my free range chickens, after I started growing a successful garden because they ate all the bright, colorful fruits every
Oh
time
yeah.
when they started to ripen. So, um, so I have rabbits as well as my chickens. Now, my chickens, they supply about 80 to 90% of all the nitrogen that I'll add to my soil from their manure. I do testing periodically, a basic soil test. I will recommend this soil test kit. I think it's called the Luster Leaf 1602. It's a very easy to do, easy to read soil test kit. So I've used it for years. I went through probably 10 different options before I found one that actually it was easy to use and easy to read the results on. So I recommend that to anybody, and it's
What,
cheap. It's like
what was that
15
name
bucks
again?
for it.
What was the
I
name
think
again?
it's Luster Leaf 1602. I believe it's the 1602 soil test kit. It's like $15 on Amazon, and you can do 10 tests that cover all your major nutrients and pH level with that.
Huh.
So
I'll have
I
to look
will
into
do
that.
that basic test on every one of my separate garden growing areas, maybe 2 times throughout the year, just to kind of monitor things, or a little more if I'm growing something different or growing a new type of crop or something in a new way. Because everything that you do different impacts the soil and the soil fertility, and you want enough but not too much. So um, I actually had a problem with too much this year. I moved them into the greenhouse that I built, the little hoop house that I built from cattle panels. And I had them there for a couple months. Well, they put a little bit too much nitrogen into the soil. And then when it started warming up in the spring, I had my tomato plants just transplanted, and the sun
Yeah.
comes through that plastic and it heats up. That heat converts a lot of that nitrogen from the urea into an ammonia nitrogen, which is the type that the plants can use and take up. But it did it so much so fast that they all started yellowing and burning up.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
lost most of my first crop. Luckily, I had extras just in case. But yeah, that also uh, really hurts the soil biology if you over nitrogenate. Whether too much nitrogen from natural sources or too much from granular fertilizers, you've got to be careful with that because that nitrogen material, it is technically a salt, and it one of the functions of it. That's why people say sometimes they burned their plants with manure. They put
Yeah.
it on and it burned it right away. If you have a high concentration of these salts, well, salts, the electrical molecular charge of them draws most other elements to them, which ends up meaning it draws water to them in the soil because water is how nutrients are carried in the soil. So if you put too much fertilizer, either organic or inorganic, it draws the moisture in the soil to them, and it actually, the fertilizer burn on plants is more of a drought symptom, but it happens very, very quickly. And you'll see the drought symptoms like the yellowing and drying out, but very acute, usually around the edges of the leaves on your plants.
Okay.
And it does the same kind of action to the microbes and earthworms. If you've ever sprinkled salt on a slug or a worm or something, you'll see them shrivel up because it sucks the water off of their body and they
Yeah.
can't breathe anymore. And that does the same thing in the soil, and it does the same thing to the microbial life in the soil. They all have this fluid around them that helps them operate. And if you put too much of your fertilizers in the soil, it sucks too much of the moisture away from everything, and you'll kill off a lot of your soil biology that way. So
Okay.
you got to be careful with it. Now, so back to the animals, sidetrack there. So my rabbits, I haven't found a really efficient way for them to deposit manure right into the garden yet, like I do with the chickens. Chicken tractor, it's amazing. The rabbits, I have them back in the woods. They have to be shaded during the summer. They can't have direct sun, so they're back
Right.
in the woods behind my house. And I just go back there a couple times a year, and I'll shovel out all the manure that piles up, and that just goes in the garden. At that point, a lot of people talk about rabbit manure being like a good fertilizer for gardens. It's not really, because it starts out fairly low, almost too low in nitrogen to call it a fertilizer, like 1 or 2% nitrogen.
Hmm.
Usually, a fertilizer's got to be closer to a 3% before I'd consider it a fertilizer. But it's also been sitting for a long time, so nitrogen in any form is very volatile. It's in the form of urea, which is what we have in our fertilizers and in our manure. That nitrogen tends to gas out very, very easily
Yeah.
if you don't work it into the soil quickly or dry it out very fast and keep it cool. So most of the manure that I get from my rabbits is mostly devoid of nitrogen because it's just been sitting for a while. But it is a very high quality organic soil amendment that the earthworms and the microbes just go crazy on. So
Yeah.
it's a super duper soil booster. And I
Okay.
go through uh, let's see, I don't have a good measurement of just how much manure, but I will tell you this, usually about 80 to 85% of the feed from any animal ends up as manure. So you can kind of give a calculation based on that. If you know about how much feed your animals are getting, about 80 to 85% of that ends up as manure. So if you're collecting it as kind of fresh, unbroken down manure, basically almost the same amount of feed that you gave them.
Hmm. Unlike cattle, you give a cow about 30 pounds of dry matter, and the cow will give you about 50 pounds of manure. They will, because
Yeah,
they add water to it. You
yeah.
know. So do you compost at all? Do you have a
I
composting program?
have about a 6 foot tall, 10 foot wide compost pile right now.
Okay.
So I compost just about anything that will rot. It all goes in the compost. I will compost any kind of meat scraps or entrails. I like to bury them so the raccoons don't get them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the raccoons just drag them away and they don't end up as compost.
Yeah.
I will compost bones. Most of the heavier animal bones that we have, they'll get pressure cooked real hard to make a good bone broth, and then they're softer. So they'll just go in the bottom of the compost pile, and they'll end up being more or less broken down when I get to them.
Yeah.
I'm not really religious on my composting. I don't turn the compost much because that takes time, and I don't have but a shovel, so I'm not going to go out and turn a 5,000 pound compost pile
Yeah.
once a month. It's just it'll break down slower, but it'll break down just the same, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I often get loads of horse manure from a neighbor just down the street. He'll come by now and then and just drop off a wagon load of manure, and I'll add that to the compost pile. And then any plant material that I don't want left in the garden, I'll just scrape that up and compost it. But as much as I can, I try to leave all the plant stubble in the garden over the winter because it helps to insulate the soil. It helps to feed the soil microbes in the spring. It breaks down some where it sets, and it really helps to stop soil erosion, which every now and then can be a problem. We can
Yeah.
get a good rain that can wash a lot of topsoil out if you don't have something to hold it in place.
Okay. Very good. Very interesting. You said in your bio it says that you like to grow a lot of forages. How about your pigs? Tell us about your pigs.
Oh, I like the pigs. Yeah. So I raise potbelly pigs. That's the breed that I settled on for quite a few reasons. Took a lot of thought, but not the least of which was somebody offered me two potbelly pigs for nothing, so I went
Yeah.
and took them.
It's a good
I
place to
have
start.
butchered probably about 700 pounds. I've gotten probably 700 pounds worth of potbelly pork. over the years from butchering my pigs. Uh, we're really increasing that right now. I've got one breeding sow, and I've selected another one for my last litter. So we're going to have two breeding sows doing 2 litters a year. So we're getting into more production, which is more meat than we can eat, but I also sell a few for pork. And I got tired of having to turn people down this year, so I decided we needed a second sow. So we're going to be selling quite a few this year. So the pigs, as far as raising them, I like the pot-bellied pigs because they're compact. They're
Yeah.
small, and for me, one of the more frugal parts of it was raising and breeding our own. But if you're keeping hogs for breeding, you're going to end up with some pretty massive animals. I mean, most pig farms don't keep them more than 2 years old, period,
Right.
because they'll end up getting 7, 8, 900 pounds.
Yeah. And they
I
get
would
big.
prefer to keep my animals a little longer than that because I don't want to always have to look around hard for good breeding stock. But the potbelly pigs being smaller, it made them manageable for me as to have breeding adults. And everybody I know who's a full scale hog breeder or breeds the big hogs, they have very strict policies about who's allowed to go anywhere near the boar pen because they get dangerous when they're big. And I want animals that are safe around my kids. So the potbelly pigs, we have one boar. He's about 150 pounds, and he'll get just a little bit bigger yet. He'll probably max out about 175 without
Hmm.
getting fat.
Yeah.
But my 5-year-old can go in there and handle him, and he's not really going to hurt him.
Hmm.
So they're also easy to contain, and that was huge for me. I don't want to spend $3,000 building a heavy-duty pig pen. I've got hog panels and T-posts, and that's my pig pen. And they're never
That's
going
it,
to
huh?
get too big for that. So it's even my younger ones, the butcher pigs. I've got them. They're in a hog panel square pen, so a 16 by 16 pen, split down the middle. I have the sows on one side, the boars on the other, and it's not even nailed down with T-posts. They're not even getting out of it without having it anchored down.
Huh.
They weigh about 50 pounds each, and one of them will get out sometimes if she gets really hungry because she roots real hard. But they're easy to contain.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to do is come home and have a 400-pound hog down wandering through the neighbor's cornfield.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Tell
Yeah.
me about it. Oh
So
no.
we grow some of the feed for our pigs. The things that we grew this year, we grew corn. I grew 2 different varieties of that. And I have about 300 pounds of corn that we saved up for pig feed for the winter. So pretty good
Okay.
on my little growing area.
Yeah. Hey,
We
can
grew
I stop you for a minute with your corn? Are you just taking the stalk down and saving the whole assembly, or are you pulling the
um,
ears off?
so I saved a pile of the corn leaves just for my rabbits, but I want as much of that residue as I can to stay in the soil because when you're growing a crop with a lot of green like corn, if you take all of that off, you're you're taking so much out of the soil and you're not putting enough back into it. You
Yeah.
need to put as much of that plant matter back into the dirt as you can. So I'll
Okay.
do basically all the corn stubble stays in the field there, my little corn patches. We're just picking off the grain.
Okay.
So
What
right
about the
now my
cob?
pigs have been I've been rotating my pigs throughout the corn patch and they're just kind of mowing down the stubble, chewing it up and tilling it into the dirt for me.
Yeah. Okay. When you were feeding corn to your rabbits, were you just throwing them a whole ear?
I've done that sometimes, but generally what I do is just about a I would do up to a quarter cup a day of corn, just whole corn. And they just sit there and get one piece at a time and chew on it for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and everybody's always saying not to feed corn to your rabbits. So I was cautious when I started trying that out. But I found some old data from a USDA research station in the 1920s that was researching feeding corn to rabbits. And the title of the report was Corn is a Great Grain for Rabbits. So basically, they considered corn at the time to be equal to or maybe better than the classic feeding option, which was whole oats.
Okay.
That right up until about the 70s, whole oats was the main feed item fed to most rabbits until they started coming out with more of your alfalfa-based rabbit pellets. So I will feed corn. Right now, I feed corn just as a bit of an energy booster to my rabbits. I mean, if you look at most rabbit feed pellets, look at the ingredients, they'll have alfalfa usually first, and a little further down they'll have corn. It boosts up the energy level a bit, which they need. They need the energy for young growing rabbits, and they need the energy in the winter. So
Yeah.
I will give them corn or even some oats. I got a great deal on a bulk purchase of whole oats just down the road at a farm. So I'll give them a tablespoon of corn or a tablespoon of oats every day, usually in the winter. Just that with, especially if you're feeding like a hay to your rabbits over the winter, which
Yeah.
we've done that several times because it's cheap and it's moderately effective. But you need to add a little more calorie to that. So a little bit of grain plus a hay, or a little bit of grain while feeding a fodder crop like the sunflower leaves or alfalfa or any grasses. A little bit of grain really boosts it up, and I see a lot better growth results on the rabbits.
Okay. Huh. I've got to try that. I've never fed corn to our rabbits.
Um, the main concerns with corn are one, that it's very high starch, so it can cause intestinal problems that can lead to bloat. Kind of like if you misfeed grain to horses, you can get them to founder and have digestive problems that way.
Yeah.
Rabbits have a very similar digestion to horses, kind of halfway between a goat and a horse. So
Okay.
they can be a little sensitive. So you want to be a little cautious when you're doing a lot more grains, bringing that into their diet. Just kind of ease them into it so that the biology of their gut can adapt to it. Basically, their bacteria in the gut can slowly adapt to it.
Yeah.
And there's a potential, although I can't find anyone who's ever had problems with it. I've read about it supposedly that the outer layer of each corn kernel, because it's more of a non-digestible fiber and it's a big chunk, they say, well, that can get stuck in a rabbit's gut and plug them up basically and
Hmm.
cause them to end up dying. So I ran some experiments on it myself. I fed whole corn to my rabbits, and I collected, dried out, and dissected all the pellets for about a week. And I could not find any hint of any larger particle fibers in there. I mean, if you're feeding a hay or a grass or anything like that already, they're eating big chunks of fiber as it is. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I can give green sticks to my rabbits. They'll eat the whole twig.
Yeah.
They can handle it for the most part. I would say maybe it's more of a big deal with the small breed rabbits, but with the larger breeds, I raise silver fox rabbits, which are about equal in size to your uh, your standard meat rabbits, more or less, like
Okay.
your New Zealands, the
Yeah.
standard size. I haven't seen an issue with that. I'm a little bit more careful when feeding the younger growing rabbits the grains, just kind of ease them into it a little bit because young rabbits can have a sensitive digestion that you can throw off easily and lead to health problems for them. So I'm just a little careful when I'm giving them a more concentrated feed item.
Okay. I've fed the tips of like maple trees, just the
Hmm.
tips,
Oh
and they
yeah.
seem to like those pretty good. One summer I went around and I every day I'd collect two or three things and put it in just to see what they would eat and what they wouldn't eat.
You know
And
what I have found, the number one leaf that my rabbits like and my pigs. There's some leaves that the from trees that the pigs just love. The number
yeah,
one is wild cherry. I don't know
yeah,
what it is, but if I throw a wild cherry branch in the pig pen, they'll fight over it.
yeah. Have you tasted them? Have you tasted the leaves?
I have before. They're a stronger flavor, kind of bitter. All they're different, but the
Yeah.
animals love them. There is a potential. I've researched this out so much. There's a potential in any of the cherry type trees, like a wild cherry, that the leaves can end up producing a toxin as they're absorbed into the animals when they're eating them. But really,
Hmm.
it's so incredibly far-fetched, and I've really had to delve into the chemistry into this. Basically, the possible threat is more if you get, and it's more like with cows, slow digestion animals. If you get leaves that have been wilted, like the branch fell down and kind of wilted from a storm, and the
Yeah.
cell structure in the leaf gets compromised to where two different chemicals mix in, then once that newly produced chemical gets digested and absorbed into the animal cells, it can convert into a toxin. But as far as I can tell, that's really only a concern for cattle, as far as like anyone who's actually had a problem with it.
Okay.
And similarly, maple leaf. Red maple is often known to be toxic for animals, but it's actually only a problem for horses. And it's only a problem right after the leaves turn red, within about 2 weeks of them turning color and falling down. They they contain a chemical that is so far unidentified, but it's known to cause hemoglobin trouble in horses that cause their
Hmm.
blood to stop absorbing oxygen.
Hmm.
But for other animals, there's no known function causing problems with red maple leaf.
Okay.
So I've done a
I
lot of research into that one lately.
yeah. I think it's interesting to follow the cows around and see what they eat. And
Hmm.
they eat a lot. They eat a lot of pine and um,
Yeah,
yeah. Even when there's plenty of grass, they got
I'm
to
not
do it.
too keen on cows myself. I'd worked on a dairy farm for a little while when I was
Yeah.
younger, and one of those cows, they had one cow named Princess. That was the mean one. Oh, she kicked me something awful, and I woke up down in the gutter. I don't, yeah, I like my smaller animals now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming up on the end, and this is really interesting because you're telling us about a lot of processes that you're performing on a very small piece of property. Well, not really. An acre is a pretty big chunk, but you're using about a half of it and
Hmm.
farming about a quarter of it. Can you give us an idea of where you hope to be in, let's say, a year from now, and then 3, and then 5? And what I'd kind of
Sure.
like to know is, are you satisfied with the acreage you have, or do you feel as though you need to be moving up to something bigger?
So with what we have, it's functional. It's very functional with a good plan and with a good set of skills.
Yep.
I want more property, and that's the goal. My wife and I, we've got a dream together. We've been saving up our pennies very strictly so that we can buy a larger piece of property and get a house instead of just the mobile home that we have now. But really, 10 to 20 acres on that amount, I could run a very well profitable full time farm, and that's kind of the goal to have. I would like ultimately 20 acres, and that would be enough land for trees for winter fuel, and about 10 to 15 acres that would be part of it pasture. So we would have some pasture crop for a couple cows or a couple sheep out
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and we would have several acres of my market garden for the farmers market, and some basic feed crops to grow our own feed, things like the sunflower, the sunchokes, and the corn to grow our own animal feed.
Okay.
So ultimately, I want 20 acres. Honestly, I could do well on 5. I could
Sure.
do my grand plan minus harvesting my own firewood on 5 acres. Just fine. I could
Yeah.
go full time, make a good full time income farming 5 acres. I mean, my quarter acre, my market garden right now, which is about an eighth of an acre. I made $3,000 selling produce out of that this year off of an eighth of an acre, and I
Hmm.
didn't sell even half of what we grew because the market ended up kind of dying out halfway through the season.
Yeah. So, have you thought of value adding some of those crops? Has
I
that crossed
have.
your?
We've gotten into that some. Basically, it comes down to I don't like Michigan's cottage food laws. I think they're very restrictive. Um, but we have some plans on things to work on down the road.
Hmm.
One of the
Yeah.
things that I do want to end up getting, whether that be now or in 5 years, I don't know, but I want to end up getting a certified food safe food preparation space, a kitchen license, and doing because I'll need that to do my own hot sauces, and I do a lot of various pickles and pickled vegetables.
Oh
I'm kind of
man.
big into that. Some guys are into craft beers. I'm into craft pickles and hot sauce. I've got a few really awesome recipes and some stuff, some jams and jellies too, that are not the types that I'm allowed to sell under cottage food law. Because, like, I have a cucumber jelly that me and my wife developed. It's weird sounding, but it tastes very amazing. So
Hmm.
incredible.
Hmm.
A spiced sweet cucumber jelly. And I'd love to bring that out to the market, but that has to be prepared in a licensed facility. So eventually, I'd like to do some of that, but I'll need a licensed kitchen for it. Other than that, some of the animal sales, there are a few workarounds to the sale of animals for meat in the state. I mean, it's everybody kind of knows you can buy a whole animal or buy a half share of an animal, and then you own that much of the live animal. It gets butchered, and you get your part of it. But when you get into the custom processing rules, anyone can become a custom processor. And if you're a custom processor, you now can process animals for somebody as long you're processing an animal that somebody owns. You're not processing it and then selling the meat or processing meat for resale. So, and this is what we're doing this weekend. I have a few friends and family and some people coming out to our place for butchering pigs and rabbits.
Hmm.
I sold a large portion of our pigs. They're coming out, they're going to get their pig. But I've offered anyone, I said, if you want help to butcher your pig, I won't butcher a pig and sell it to you. But if you buy one of my pigs, I will help you butcher your pig, and I can cut it up and wrap it all for you and give you all this meat ready to go home and put in your freezer.
Okay.
So a bit of a technicality there. There's been some judge rulings on that exemption there. Basically, they want to see that the meat you sold it to the person on location, and then it was butchered right then and there without leaving the premises. Basically, is what they want to see in that scenario.
Okay.
So,
I've been a custom processor now for almost 20 years.
yeah,
So I've been around that and I know how that works in reality.
yeah. So I'm doing some custom processing and the animal sales, which we're very small scale, really. I'm
Okay.
only selling. I only sold 4 pigs this year. Next year we're going to be doing. Well, next year I'm probably going to be selling 3 litters of piglets at
Okay.
about 6, 7 months old.
Yeah, so you could continue to expand,
It'll be an
you know,
experiment. I'll see how it
just
goes. If we
but
can't end up getting enough buyers lined up, I'm going to be butchering a lot more of them younger and smaller, just to
okay.
put in our freezer.
Yeah. What's kind of nice too, what I found, we used to do farmers markets. We did them for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun, but I found that we used to take a lot of stuff there and we'd bring some of it home. And so it was a lot of time, and it was me and Jill because we had little kids then.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
So if you added up the man hours, it wasn't working out
it's
so good. And
it's
so we
it's tough to run a market that makes the rest of the week profitable.
does it for you?
If I'm very good with my time, very strict and smart with what I'm doing when, then it was just barely about worth it.
Okay.
If I was at a bigger market, I could have done much better with the quality of produce that I was bringing in. Which that's the big
Mhm.
deal for the larger markets, the money making markets. If you can bring at least moderate volume, but really high quality stuff that's going to impress people, and then you set it up in a way that looks nice. That's how you can go through your inventory well. But you got to have a good market, and there aren't very many good farmers markets. There's not many farmers markets in general because, well, we have supermarkets these days. Things
Yeah.
changed since the 60s.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a push to try and bring those farmers markets back more now, but it's going to take a while because the entire society now is used to no farmers markets. Go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Well, we saw kind of a change in things where people did not want to go out of their way to come to the farm. But after the Wu flu came, that changed. I have a lot of people that come to the farm
Hmm.
now, and it keeps me from having to go to farmers market. We find a lot of people don't want to go to farmers market because it was there was a lot of restrictions there that they found at the stores, So
Yeah.
people got turned off with that. And I haven't gone to farmers market for years, but I may do it in the coming season because we see a lot of people getting into homesteading and farming,
Hmm.
and they want instruction, and we're kind of doing that. We're doing adult education, and I just think it would be a good place to start the conversation up. So
You
you may
know,
see me there, you
for
know.
somebody who's just starting out in kind of this homesteading thing, um, even a small local farmers market can be a really great thing for them to get involved in. I mean,
Mhm.
my oldest is 5 years old now. So my girls are pretty young. I have four girls and another one on the way. So my girls, my two older ones, they grew th- their own little garden sections. They grew some flowers and they grew cucumbers for the market. They made just enough money selling their flowers and cucumbers to buy, they each bought 20 chicks about a month ago. And so
Okay.
next spring, they're going to hit the farmer's market selling eggs.
All
And
right.
they're all revved up to grow more cucumbers because apparently that was the big thing we should have brought more of, anyways.
Yeah.
So they're getting into this, seeing that they're doing little chores, trying to pull out weeds now and then, and trying to take care of the dirt. They're really taking care of their chicks and their chickens right now, and that's going to be they're going to be the ones going. I'm going to take them to the farm store. They're going to be buying the feed with their money for the chickens, and it's it's so funny. They go and tell all their friends that they're farmers now,
Yeah.
and tell them that they're growing flowers and cucumbers and chickens. But I mean, just something basic. Anyone can grow enough of something simple just to bring a bushel of produce to a farmer's market and sit for 2 hours and sell a little bit. And it's not much, but just the little bit of satisfaction and achievement, that sense of achievement that you get early
Yeah.
on, that really helps out. I mean, it takes a while before you feel like you're doing much well. And as soon as you can, even just bring in a little bit, small farmers markets are a great way to to start for a small brand new operation. They're not really
Yeah.
worth it for a serious operation generally, unless you get to the very competitive cutthroat markets. But just a small little rural farmers market is a great way. Most of them, if you're a small grower, they'll let you in. They won't be much of a hassle to you. They want you to come in usually on a small market, and it's a great way to just try and sell a little something. Start
Mm.
understanding some of the principles of sales and things like you got to make sure that you keep certain produce cool and out of the sun so it doesn't get wilty, or
Yeah.
learn some of the basics that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Salesmanship. Salesmanship
Oh,
is
that's
huge.
huge. Basic salesmanship is I took a lot of notes at the farmers market of what was working and what wasn't that different people were doing. And the biggest thing of all that I took away was don't bring a chair and sit down the whole time.
Hmm.
I mean, I get it. Some people, the older folks, you got to sit down sometimes.
Yeah.
But the difference is, I mean, if I'm got my apron on and I'm just, even if I'm not doing anything, just looking down at my clipboard, act acting busy at least.
Yeah.
Something about that, and you're standing up. You're very approachable, and it creates a much more approachable feel for my market stall that way. Whereas if you're sitting down, and I tried this out experimenting on my own, the second you sit down, people just kind of glance over you. I think it has more to do with the line of eyesight. When you're kind of eye level with people,
Yeah.
people just hone in on that more.
Hmm. Hmm.
So just an interesting observation.
Yeah. I can see that. I used to have a lot of fun. Like there was good networking, good
Mhm.
good conversation with those
I,
guys.
s- I did on average something like $150 at the farmer's market in the
Hmm.
course of about 3 or 4 hours. And then found out towards the end of the season I had to build up a little more, but I could do another easy $100 or more doing some local deliveries to a few different people that really liked the quality of the produce that I was growing.
Hmm.
Um, and that really helped us out a lot. Just doing some local deliveries. There was a few people at church who I got them to try some of my produce, particularly my lettuce and my beets. Most people don't like the taste of lettuce. I'll admit that I don't. I don't like to bite a piece of lettuce, but the lettuce that I grew, working on more of these, building up the soil biology, more natural type soil building practices, it
Yeah.
creates a product that's known as nutrient dense, and
Okay.
nutrient dense is synonymous with flavor dense. Very big deal in the market garden growing groups. So growing a lettuce that you bite it and it actually tastes good, me and my wife were shocked. And I got other people to try some of those things, super fresh. I mean, within 12 to 24 hours, picked and sold, which is the big key for some that flavor like that. It's got to be super fresh. But getting that
Okay.
kind of super fresh produce to people, and they loved it, and then they just kept buying all year long.
Hmm. Yeah. This people become loyal to you, which is
I
nice.
have, well, that's like with my pigs. That's why I decided I wanted to get more pigs, uh, get a second sow, because I've got one person who's coming back for multiple years, and I was just raising them for our family, and I happened to give them one, and
Yeah.
now they want to come back and buy one every year. They said that the flavor of the meat, the way that we raise them, lots of exercise, raised outside, fresh air and sunshine, and the more heritage breeds, much darker meat, darker
Yeah.
texture. They don't want regular pork anymore. They only want the stuff I have.
Yeah. Yeah. You spoil them, right?
I guess I'm
Yeah.
spoiled. I hate grocery store meat now.
I know. It's kind of it's a letdown when you see a what looks like a nice piece of meat and then it just doesn't have the flavor
Yeah,
that you used
a
to.
bland, dry white pork chop.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Yeah. When you ever go to a bed and breakfast and you get up in the morning, they have bacon, you can kind of smell it and you think, oh, and then you grab a bunch and don't even make it through the first piece because it just doesn't taste like
Yeah,
homemade
kind of
bacon.
like Big Boy, the Big Boy breakfast buffet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh, that leather bacon. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, shucks. Somebody just commented on some of the pork that I gave them. I found that's a good way to get them hooked and be interested in buying some later. I'll give them a shoulder of pork. They said it was more beef-like than pork-like, just because it's so
Yeah.
rich and dark and flavorful.
Yeah.
Most pork is fairly bland.
Yeah, it's the other white meat that was their
That's what it was
mantra that they
marketed
gave
as.
it to
They
make.
started raising them as more of a white meat, limiting exercise. Um, and butchering them younger, and yeah,
Yeah.
lean white meat.
Yeah. Nobody wants it. They feed it to mostly prisoners and school kids. Yeah, because nobody will buy it. Well, I tell you what, this has been a really good interview because a, a majority of people in the United States live on small acreages,
Yeah.
like a quarter acre or less.
Hmm.
And we have become interested in this just through some of the interviews that I've done. Actually, I was being interviewed by another guy, and he came to that conclusion. He told me that um, a lot of people don't want to get into homesteading because they don't have any land. And so
The
we
big
decided,
things that keep people out of it are I don't have land, I wouldn't know where to start, and I don't have enough money to start. Those are the things that keep people from starting. I am amazed since I got into it more. I've been amazed to find how many people I know that have had similar desires and dreams, but never really thought they were actually feasible. But
mhm,
people I would have never thought in a million years would want that kind of life always have wanted it, but just never thought it was feasible until they saw kind of how I was doing it.
mhm,
I mean,
yeah,
you can do a lot. Even a little 30 by 50 garden will grow all the produce for an average family.
really, 30 by 50. I guess I should know. That's ours is a little bigger than
1,500
that.
square feet. I
Yeah.
got, let's see, I had a few basic figures. I can grow like between 300 and 400 pounds of corn on a 30 by 50. I can, um, I can grow easy. I can do 1,500 pounds of tomatoes on a 30 by 50, and I can bring those to market. That's an easy 3 grand if you can
Yeah.
sell every one of them, and you can maintain your picking them and delivering them and selling them on time.
Yeah.
Something like potatoes. Potatoes are super productive and they're not hard to grow. Just a few things to get right. You can do like 3,000 to 4,000 pounds of potatoes on a 30 by 50. About 5 pounds per potato plant.
Wow.
They didn't. I mean, the sun chokes. A lot of people are scared of them because people hear that they can give you gas. If you cook them thoroughly, they don't. I've found, but I can grow 10 pounds per plant and do one plant every 2 square feet.
Hmm.
So I mean, those are insane
Yeah.
when you look at it like that. I mean, that's 5 pounds per square foot
Yeah.
I harvested this year from my sunchokes.
Huh. I like
Um,
them too.
there's
I
you
really
can
like them.
you can do a lot in a small area as long as you're intentional and smart with it and manage it well. It's all about management.
Yeah. Well, good enough. I appreciate you coming on and spending an hour with us. It was a good interview.
Mhm.
Um, I guess I'll probably let you go now, and then I usually chat with my folks a little bit if I can. So I'll be talking to you. Thanks a lot, Jordy.
All
Remember, anyone
right.
can farm. I'm cutting you off. I'll see you.
Bye
Bye.
now.
All right, that was nice. I appreciate him coming on. Um, isn't it refreshing to meet all kinds of different people that are into homesteading? It really is. It really just pumps me right up. I was trying to get the point across that we see the small acreage people as a very important demographic in the homesteading world. So much so that we're dedicating a quarter acre of Baker's Green Acres to a quarter acre homestead. And I'm calling on people in the tribe to say what do we need to do and how do we lay this out. Our very own Rachel Jamerson is going to be helping us out. And that's a project that we've already started on. We've already got some of the stuff set up over there. My son is using the shop over there to fix cars, but he's slowly getting his stuff out of the way. And then we're going to commandeer that quarter acre and put in a pretty good size garden. I'm actually going to have some calves and a little pen of pigs and chickens, and then we want to do some berry bushes, some trees. I mean, nothing is going to be left. If we can grow food on it, we're going to do it. And I think it's going to be a fun exercise to gather data on the quarter acre homestead. So you don't want to miss that. I think we'll start getting some video footage on that here pretty quick. Don't really have a timeline for you. Very, very, very busy around here on Baker's Green Acres. We had a class last weekend down in Trufant, Michigan at the Clark Homestead. Very enlightening time, very good time. Had a lot of fun. We Got back, had a couple days off, and then Thursday, it's today, yeah, it's Thursday, we butchered chickens for custom processing, and we will be doing the same thing tomorrow. Saturday, we're going to knock down a couple of beef for the beef butchering class on the, wow, third and fourth right there. Sunday's off, and then we're right back to butchering poultry again on Monday. I've got about 50 birds of ours that we have to get processed. So, if any of you people need Thanksgiving turkeys, you need to let us know. Maybe you can come by the farm and pick them up on Thursday or on Monday afternoon, or Tuesday would be fine too. I think Tuesday is Thanksgiving Eve. So these will be fresh killed. Oh no, Wednesday is Thanksgiving Eve. Thanksgiving's always on a Thursday. My wife reminds me of that every year. So, great interview. I don't know who we have on next week. So, if any of you would like to be interviewed, make yourselves known and we will see what we can do. All right, that's going to be it for now. I will tell you that I got some input from a friend about I'm not making enough videos during the day. And these are the videos when I'm just doing my regular thing and I pull my phone out and make an impromptu video. That's the best videos that I ever make. And I never really listen to them again. I just do it if I'm doing something and I figure people would benefit from it in some way, maybe motivate or empower or equip people to be all they can be in the homesteading world. That's what I do. And so I'm going to make one every day until I don't make one every day. But I'm trying to be consistent with it. Make it in the morning, so from the time I wake up until before lunch, sometime in there. Maybe I'll narrow it down here after a while. And I got a lot of interesting things that I'm doing, just discoveries that I make, just really little things, just little things. The one I'm going to make tomorrow, maybe, if something else doesn't come along, but one of these days I'm going to make a video on the floor in my chicken house. My new chicken house, I built it on concrete because I said, I want to be able to harvest the litter off the floor because it's so important for my fertility in my compost, and my compost is real important to the fertility of the whole farm. So I'm actually walking into the chicken house, and yeah, the egg boxes are there. I want eggs for sure, but I'm looking at the floor like, are these guys manuring outside or are they manuring in here? What could I do to make them manure in here more? So I put shavings down on the floor, and then I brought in about a half a bucket of compost, tractor bucket, and I shoveled it in pretty thick. And then I mixed it in, and then I've been mixing biochar in with it. So I think I'm going to get a really nice mix out of this. But we burn wood in the house, and that's how we heat the house all winter long. And so I generate a lot of ashes. And usually I'll make a pile up by the compost pile, but I don't want to mix them in because sometimes there's nails in there. And I don't want nails on the lawn and other places, right? Or staples or anything else that will be in logs. There's all kinds of stuff in logs. So my brother-in-law gave me this little sift, little tiny sift. It's about a foot wide, 2 feet. I think he made it, and it's really nicely made. And so I took it down to the chicken house, and I'm going to leave it down there right inside. So when I get a bucket of ashes, it's like, whoo, I'm taking this down to the chicken house. And you run it through the sift, so I get the nails and stuff out. And then the chickens do their thing with the wood ashes. They take their little bath in it, and it keeps their mites down to zero. And it's also a good additive for the compost. So It's just a little thing like that. It just feels like, hey, this fits here. Everything seems to fit someplace. Well, we had a pretty good time today. Pretty good. The kids are real psyched to go back out tomorrow. It was very cold working. I was outside the whole day. I had 3 pairs of gloves, and I would bring a pair in and I would put it on the scalder exhaust pipe. And then I would get a new pair of gloves. And then when those got wet, I would bring those in and put them on the exhaust pipe. And so I had 3 pair, and I would come in about every 20 minutes and get a new pair of, take one of the dry pair of gloves off and put it on. And I did that all day long. I still have my work clothes on. I'm going to go take a shower and fall down. Got to have something to eat, and I'm falling down. Appreciate everybody coming by. We will be coming back to you next Tuesday. I want to remind everybody about the beef butchering class. You don't want to miss that. You really don't. I mean, I don't think there's any beef butchering classes going on in the United States. You will spend 2 days under the tutelage of people that know how to do this, and then you will have it. You don't want to miss this. This is going to be really good. And then the charcuterie class, also an outstanding class, right there. 11th through the 12th, 11th and 12th. It's a Saturday, Sunday. You don't want to miss that. These are essential homestead skills that bring you to the next level of homesteading. So if you can do this, it's worth making the sacrifice to do this, because then you have it. It's a tool that you have. And then my hope is that you will share it with others. I would really like to do a charcuterie class at someone else's farm. Anybody out there hear what I'm saying? I'd really like to do that, because this is what is going to make a difference in agriculture in the United States. And if you make a difference in agriculture, you're going to make a difference in the lives of the people, right? Self-sufficiency is key to making it through these times that we're going through right now. And, I track this stuff, and if there's something that I feel as though I need to pass on, I do. But I'd rather you just know that evil is weak. Continue to build. You're not evil. You're strong, but continue to build. A good solid dose of apathy towards what you see coming out of Washington and the State House would probably be a good thing. Just keep your head down and build, and don't fall for the left-right paradigm, because it's been alive and well for many, many years, and nothing really seems to get resolved. I am feeling how you have maybe a 30,000 foot view of something, but then you take it up to 100,000 feet and you look down and that's not so big. It fits into the whole scheme of things. Well, I think a lot of what of course, we as good conservative people, we don't pay any attention to CNN. So of course we go over to Fox News, and not that I do, but because I don't get TV here or anything. But I tend to look at more conservative sites, but the liberals are looking at super liberal sites, and they're getting completely different information than we're getting. So what does that cause? Conflict. When we're in conflict with each other, we're not watching what's going on around us. And all the while they're saying, how about the Green New Deal? How about the Great Reset? How about go get you some whats? And I think we lose sight of that, and we wind up, looking at each other and fighting with each other. That's dumb. That's really dumb. I know, because before this whole thing really started in earnest, and I believe it started when Trump was elected into the White House, and I voted for him too. I thought it was cool. I love to see Rosie O'Donnell squirm, but I lost a lot of my liberal friends. And before that, we were just growing food and everything was cool. Looking back on it. All right. So it polarized us, and I believe it was intentional. And I, fell into the same thing everybody else did. This time it's like we all felt that what happened in 2020 wasn't too copacetic. And so we thought, well, now the midterms will get that green wave going, that's or that red tsunami going. I knew it wasn't going to happen because it would cause more division. You'd have more people on the right that would be mad. And where's their anger going to go? To the people on the left. They're not the ones that subverted it. They're not. They didn't have that much pull to do it. And so it seems as though the whole thing is just sort of an operation to irritate folks and keep us from keeping our eye on the ball. And what's going to happen in 2024? Old Trumpster announces that he's going to run in 2024. So the people who are really irritated about the midterms, they're all of a sudden already, well, we'll get you in 2024. I can't believe it. And I mean, is it going to be different in 2024? I don't know, but just another way to kind of kick the can down the road a little bit more until I don't know. I don't know what's going to come of it, honestly. But I am purposely trying to say, I don't care, because I am going to continue to build. And I'm not just saying build buildings and fences, build your own character, build a network. I'm built, that was one of the takeaways I had from the Declare Homestead Homestead Hog Harvest that we did this weekend. It's a little bit different dynamic when I go to their house and conduct a class, because I don't have to worry about hospitality. That was all on them. That was on Beth and Tommy too. I mean, it's more on them. So when I'm not intently instructing, it's like, yeah. So what do you do for a living? I got to talk to people, and we talked Tuesday about the abundant lifestyle of the homestead. And the homestead is a place where lots of different people can come. Homestead is more, I'll tell you what it is. The homestead now to me is a platform. It is a platform. So I have this homestead, right? And if you look at bakersgreenacres.com and say, what does this guy do for a living? And you go down through it. Whoa, he's a consultant. He consults with other people about how to do homesteading. Yeah, I do. At first, I thought it was kind of dumb, but yeah, there's quite a need for consulting in homesteading. Why? Because other people are saying, I would like that to be my homestead. That's where I would like to operate my whatever it is I do, whether I work from an office there, whether I run I was just at a woman's house today. My dogs were over there, actually. They escaped through a hole in the fence. And she runs a hair salon out of her home. Really nice, really nicely done. I mean, it's separate from the house. I mean, it's connected to the house, but it's not like it's in the kitchen or anything. It's completely separate from anything. It's just its own room. I don't know if they built the house. No, they didn't. They didn't build the house. But anyway, and I know people that run chiropractic offices off the Homestead platform. We run a consulting business off off the homestead. We run a butchering business off the homestead. We run an adult education program off the homestead. So it's sort of like a platform that you live at, you eat off of, you recreate off of, and then you can do what you have to do. Let's say that you're a mechanic. I got a friend that's a mechanic. He's got a shop on his homestead. He doesn't do a lot of animals or anything, and he plans to. He just hadn't got around to it. So that's what we're seeing, and that was my takeaway from the Declare Homestead Hog Harvest was what other people are doing and what made them respond to the call to come learn how to butcher an animal. Very, it takes a week or so before it sets in. What just happened? What did I just experience here? I know it was pleasurable. I know it was different, but what exactly happened? What was the dynamics? And I came away from there, and then I got a whole bunch of friend requests, and very cool because I'll be friends on Facebook, and then they're posting stuff that they're doing, and so I get to see that. Very cool. Very cool. I'm glad I'm into something. I really am. I'm glad I'm into something. Hey, I'm gonna end it here, and then we will pick it up again on Tuesday. But of course, I will be making a video daily, the day in the life videos, and that will be over on Baker's Green Acres Facebook. Okay, I couldn't do it today because I made one or two or three of them, and then Facebook said, "Oh, we need some more information from you on this because too many people are watching your videos." Something like that. It's like only a couple hundred, that's still a lot of people. I mean, if you think about if there was a couple hundred people in the house, that's a lot of people. If you got to talk to a couple hundred people. So let's do that. Let's this weekend, let's focus on not the garbage that's being thrown at you to scare you. Let's just focus on continue building, continue your sustainable processes, continue your preparation for, now we're preparing for spring. So continue your preps, you're prepping for the next season. And along the way, make sure you're prepped for deep winter, which probably is coming. I don't think we'll see the ground again. We've got 4 or 5 inches on the ground, and it's supposed to be 30 for the next 10-day forecast. So it doesn't look like it's going to thaw. I was talking with a guy tonight, and he said, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? And it was a nice question because I had put a lot of thought into it. I said, oh no, I don't want the snow to go away at this point. I really don't. Because what happens if the snow goes away at this point, that means it melts, right? And that 4 or 5 inches of snow is going to become, rain, basically, and it's going to sink down into the soil, and then it gets cold at night, so it doesn't quite go far enough, and then it gets cold, so you wind up getting frost that goes down. Where now we had snow came down on ground that was soft, and it actually insulates the ground. And if we can get another couple of feet on top of that, then we don't really have to worry about the ground freezing, the frost going really deep and freezing pipes and stuff like that. So you can have a lot of snow, but it's still a safe situation. Or you can we could get a foot of snow, and then it thaws, and then we have a lot of water going into the soil, and then it's going to freeze, and that's not good, for things like pipes and things like that. All right. All right. Jordy's saying potbelly pork can make really good charcuterie from what I hear. Interesting. All right. Anyone can farm. We'll see you guys. Have a good weekend. Dig in.